Let's go over the for sale by owner prospecting workflow. The very first thing we're going to need in our prospecting workflow is data. I use Mojo for that. Mojo data is very good. It's very accurate. And most importantly for me, it's also very convenient where it's automatically put into the dialer system every morning, first thing as soon as those numbers and leads come out, which is important if you want to get an early start with your prospecting. It's already there. I used to use another system where I would have to get the data and then manually upload it into the dialer. And then I switched to just using Mojo's data, and it eliminated that step for me. So it's very convenient. The data is automatically imported if you subscribe through Mojo's data subscription. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our dialer fired up. I use a 3-line dialer that's got automatic voicemail drops, so it makes it very convenient. It also has a feature where it'll send out auto emails for everybody that I contact also in an email system. And that also is Mojo. I use Mojo's power dialer 3 lines at a time, and it just makes the prospecting so efficient and so quick, and I can cover so much ground with it. So that's our first step in the prospecting workflow, is the data, and then our dialer, getting our dialer fired up and starting to dial. It's actually the most difficult part of the entire process, is making the first phone call. So the dialer makes it really easy. You just dial in, set your phone to the side, and control everything through the interface in the dialer. And like I say, it just makes it so much easier because the dialer keeps dialing one after the other, and you just have to commit to sitting there for a certain block of time. It's much easier than if you hand dial these numbers and have to keep hand dialing. At some point, you're going to get distracted or something else. So I find that the Mojo Power Dialer is super effective for keeping me focused with my prospecting. So data, then the dialer, and now you're actually making contact using the scripts that you learned in Module 2. Now, in Module 2, we're setting up our prospect to give them an item of value, but we're also going to ask for the appointment if the prospect is ready to go for that, or they answer certain questions in our script affirmatively, and we've got the rapport with them. We're actually going to try and set a listing appointment with them on that initial call. So the next thing that you're going to need if you do that, let's say you set the appointment with them verbally over the phone. I like to use another tool called Calendly. Calendly, which a lot of you may have heard of, is super convenient. But what I really like about Calendly is that it actually sends reminders to the prospect. Years ago, it would be so frustrating where we would have listing appointments set, and then you go to the house and the prospect no-shows you on the listing appointment. You spend all that time and effort and gas driving out there, and then they would no-show. And then we figured out, oh, what if we had these reminders the way that dentists used to do? That's where I got the idea back in the day. And then Calendly was good at fulfilling this. So Calendly, we always send out our reminder 24 hours in advance, 3 hours in advance, and then 15 minutes in advance. So that they don't forget about your appointment. Especially if you're setting an appointment a week or more out, I generally don't consider anything a week or more out a real appointment. But if it is, it can remind them. And also there are options in there for them to reschedule if something came up or something else. I would much rather they rescheduled than just ghosted me because they were embarrassed that they couldn't make the appointment. One other thing I like about Calendly also is that it allows me to fulfill certain bonuses through their fulfillment system. Not only does it send them reminders, but let's say they need to check with a spouse or some other stall that they gave me, but they're actually interested, and it was maybe a legitimate complaint that they didn't want to nail down the exact time because the spouse needed to be there. I can actually send them my calendar link and let them pick their day and time that works for them. I also like doing this, and I've been using Calendly a lot for this, and actually letting them select, as long as they do select something. Otherwise, I follow up and press them on it a little bit more. It allows me to control my schedule because I get to set in Calendly when I'm available, and they're forced to pick a time that's convenient for me. Otherwise, I'm stuck with a ton of listing appointments at 7:30 at night, and that's no fun because the appointment takes an hour. If it's in person, it takes 2 hours, and you're driving home at 10 at night after the listing appointment. So it allows me to, and they will pick a time, even if it's not necessarily convenient for them, but if it's their only choice, people will pick the time that works. And it allows you to control your schedule a little bit. So back to that initial call, once we complete the call, I've either sent them out the link or not, but I automatically in Mojo, my CRM that I use is Boomtown. There's an import button, so I can import all of that data automatically into my CRM, which is Boomtown. It's just so convenient. Mojo has a CRM system also, and it does have autoresponders and other things like that. But I have a whole team, and so we have other data sources coming in also, whether it's buyer data. I actually use Mojo for expired listing data also. But Boomtown is ultimately the hub where we keep all of our data of people we've actually spoken to, whether it's our sphere, buyer leads, paid leads, all of those things. Just because it's so powerful, and it helps me to manage that as a team and be able to look at all the other teams' data and a bunch of other features that it uses too. And I like it that it has a very good system for sending out text and email autoresponders, as well as keeping track of our phone follow-ups. So Boomtown is the next tool that I use, that I import the data after I've made a contact. I don't import the lead if I didn't make contact with a for sale by owner. I just leave it in Mojo and then just keep calling that daily until I actually make contact. So now I'm talking about a lead that I actually spoke to this person, ran through our script, have promised them some deliverables, and now I've got a follow-up schedule and texts and emails that need to go out. So once they're in Boomtown, I have an autoresponders automatically set up that will send them automatically text messages and email messages on a set schedule that I've already pre-set up. Now, these emails that go out are extremely powerful. They're what I call a soap opera sequence of emails, meaning the email is story-based. It starts on kind of an action step to hook the person in. And you know how in a soap opera, where the soap opera always kind of ends on a cliffhanger. And so email number 2 is where that loop gets closed. Only by the end of email number 2 in this story, it leaves another open and a hook again, so that it keeps them kind of interested. It builds rapport with them. But in each of these emails also, I'm delivering the deliverables that I promised to them. One of the things, as you learned in module 2 in your script, is we promised the for sale by owner video. So this is a video by David Knox. This is also one of the tools that you're going to need. David Knox produces these real estate videos for expired listings, for sale by owner, buyer, and there's another one that's super important also that I use in my listing presentation, which is pricing your home to sell, which that keeps them from overpricing the property, but without you having to fight with them about the price. I always have them watch that first before we talk about price. Anyway, that's David Knox Productions, which I highly encourage you to use that in your for sale by owner prospecting workflow. I've used it for years, and it just works so well as a rapport builder. But more importantly, this tool knocks them off the idea of selling it by themselves. They see it as helpful to help them know what to do and show them what to do to sell it by themselves. But it's the same thing as somebody that wants to fix their own transmission. And me as a mechanic, I'm like, hey, let me give you this video that'll show you how to fix it yourself in your garage. They'll find the video useful. It will show them how to fix their transmission. However, once they figure out that they're going to need a hydraulic lift and they're going to need $5,000 worth of tools and everything else to do it, and then the labor involved and all of the steps, yes, they know how to fix their transmission now, but they're probably not going to want to do it. It's one of the brilliant things that David Knox figured out, and that I've been using that ever since then. And it's always welcome to get that video from the seller, and they are grateful to you. And then on my next follow-up call, I can tell that their enthusiasm is somewhat deflated after they've watched that video. Not deflated from selling, but just deflated from selling it on their own because it's a lot of work, especially considering what they're really going to be saving by selling it on their own. So the David Knox video is an essential part of knocking them off of that idea of selling it on their own. And it's done passively without you having to talk them into that. The video does the heavy lifting for you. And that's delivered in the email soap opera sequence autoresponders. It's also delivered in the text autoresponders that start going out after your first contact. In the text autoresponders, I deliver the David Knox video that way. I also have another video called the 3 listing secrets for the system that we created, the ultimate listing system, that just kind of impresses them with us, what we do that's different, that's super powerful to create multiple offer situations on properties just like theirs. So the first video is to knock them off the idea of selling it on their own. And the second video is like, wow, these people really can do a good job getting me the most amount of money for this property. Maybe I ought to look into them, because I'm assuming we are not the only person calling them as prospects for sale by owners. So we have to really stand out from all of the other people that are just kind of halfway going through their scripts, or they're not standing out, or they're not offering things of value, or there's just nothing special. And they're just going through the standard scripts that you've heard over and over, and that I learned on and you learned on. Everyone's saying the same stuff, starts to sound exactly the same. That's why our program here and the modules that you've learned are really for the purpose of standing out, cutting through the noise, and really delivering for these people, so that you at the very least, you want to be one of the 2 or 3 agents that they pick to do listing appointments on. And if you do a really good job, there's a good chance you're going to be the only one delivering a listing presentation to them. So the email and text autoresponders through Boomtown go out to them, and those also push them to a separate tool that I use, which is an actual listing site. The listing site itself is like a mini listing presentation that's delivered in electronic form. It's the same thing that I go through in my actual listing presentation. So my texts and emails are pushing them over to that listing site where they're being pre-sold, pre-indoctrinated, and there's also a ton of bonuses that are being offered to them to set a listing appointment. They click on a button and set a listing appointment with me in an automated way that I don't even know about till I get notified of it. And again, I embed my Calendly link into that listing website so that they're being sold without me having to sell them. I'm letting the website, it's a sales funnel actually on listings. I'm letting that do the heavy lifting, and then letting them sign up at a time of my convenience through my Calendly page on my listing site. And there's actually a second half to that site that they can't see, that I actually go through my actual listing presentation with them that does the other half of the heavy lifting. And me, as the agent, I'm simply their guide through the different pieces of that. And so I'm never at odds with them. I'm never having to sell them anything. I'm letting my presentation do the selling. And then I'm simply their guide, leading them to the decision of listing with me and then pricing their home correctly with me. And I'll show you more about that listing site down below. And then the only other thing left are the follow-up calls. We're going to follow up after our first initial contact. We're going to follow up on day 2. Day 2's follow-up is going to be, hey, did you get the For Sale by Owner video by David Knox? That's the main thing I want to know, is did they get it and did they watch it? And if they did or they didn't, that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just another excuse for me to make contact with them so they remember who I am, build more rapport. And then if they say they didn't get it, I'm going to resend it to them again. And it's just another reason to have contact with them. And then I'm going to follow up at week number 1. I'm going to push for that listing appointment at week number 1 harder. Week number 2, I'm pushing very hard for the listing presentation, or to set the appointment for the listing presentation. Week 3 and 4, you're running out of time, because at the end of week 4, that house is going to be listed with an agent and it needs to be you. If you follow the workflow and you do everything the way that I've laid it out here for you, the chances of you being the number 1 or number 2 agent in that person's mind that they're going to give a shot to for a listing presentation is going to be extremely high. You're probably going to be the only one, as long as you follow this and you're consistent. Consistency is the key with this workflow. And these are really the only tools that you're going to need for that. And I highly recommend that you get them. And down below, I'm going to show you in more detail a little bit more about each tool. But that, in a nutshell, is how my workflow works, the tools that I use, how I use them, and why I use them in that way.